shock was, on that notice, was a bit of a shock was the three platoon commanders that were ahead of me. They sort of went through in company cohorts. The three platoon commanders that were ahead of me were all sacked by the CO. We were still in Burnham, Battalion Depot, where you lifted off to go up to Singapore. And the group that had gone ahead of us to Singapore were to take the next company away to Vietnam. The CO just didn't like the look of all three of them. So they became assistant adjutants, assistant adjutant. And so all of a sudden, all I had to do was worry about my mess bill and whether I get a leave pass for Friday night and so on. Back there in Christchurch, all of a sudden I was on a plane heading up to what was then Trenta Camp in Malaysia, and we were the three platoon commanders for the next company for Vietnam, Whiskey 3, and they were Upton, Fisher, I think is still in the army, down there at Burnham somewhere, not long to go, myself, and we sent a fourth platoon commander, we always had a spare one. And so we were sent up to Trenta Camp. Now you can imagine what it was like. No ribbons, rushed up to join the battalion, and there's this group up there, soldiers that have been 2 years under training, ready to go to Vietnam. So they had their ship together. Sergeant had been with them for quite some time. The officer that had been training them was ex-Vietnam. He'd been shot and wounded up there, so the guys thought he was a pretty hero. Whatever he said, they thought, Mr. Sheriff said this, Mr. Sheriff said that, and I got sick of hearing that, I can tell you. And so they said, well, here's your new platoon commander. And you can imagine how I felt. I felt quite inadequate and quite apprehensive, and thought, how the hell am I going to sort this lot out, or get their respect, or how are we going to form a team? And it was a difficult period. And some of you may have sort of felt that, especially young officers. That's why I wrote that thing, that handout thing, that years later I sort of sat down and wrote some notes for platoon commanders that might follow, because nobody ever told me much of that sort of thing. I was sick of COs and company commanders in all their wisdom saying, read this book, read that book. It was usually about field marshals commanding armies in World War II. I didn't really see how that applied to a second lieutenant in Burnham, who had to chuck these Vietnam vets out of the boozer at closing time. And they would all chuckle and look at you and decide whether they're going to throw you through the window. So, very much time, gentlemen, please. Okay, so it was pretty tough, pretty awkward time. However, the relationships with my sergeant went from suspicion, mutual suspicion, like he sort of thought, God, here's a young one, I've really got to, sort him out. And I went from, how's this guy ever going to like me? Mutual suspicion to acceptance. We both started to accept each other for what we were, our strengths and our weaknesses. From then on, it went to respect. We respected each other. We knew we were okay. We relaxed with each other. To what it is today, which is basically friendship, which has lasted 23, 24 years. So, if you're lucky, that's the way it goes. Okay, moving perhaps from training now to operations. What happens to you in your platoon? What happens when we move from a training sort of situation when operations are coming up? What do you think might happen? What do you think might happen? Some of the things that are going to happen.
Everybody seems to get more eager to training.
Sorry?
Everybody seems to be more eager for training.
Exactly right. Suddenly, there's a whole point to the training, right? And you get this change in attitude right through the platoon. There's a different attitude to training, not like, training's not something you go get through the morning tea and then lunchtime and then evening meal and leave. All right? It's actually, there's a point to it, and people start taking a real dedicated interest. Right? So that's right, you do. Anything else? What else would happen? Sorry? The intensity of training picks up. You start to work very hard on some very basic fundamentals, right? You don't just follow a program, which is this afternoon is ambushing and tomorrow morning is harbouring, and you get through that. You actually stick at it until it's exactly right. So you thrash it and thrash it and thrash it until, you're happy. Yep, that certainly happens. You work harder. But things get, strangely enough, get easier. Because of that change in attitude to the training, because you suddenly realise where you're all going and you start looking at each other with a little bit more sort of, they've got their act together, they know what they're doing. And so things on one hand get easier, while at the same time they get harder. What else?
judge your peers or anything.
Yep, there's got to be a weeding out. Right? Now, we were over strength, and it was deliberate policy. The company was over strength because we had to, in the end, decide who wasn't going to go. And you had to start making decisions about people that fell out on runs. Right? You didn't send them down for remedial PE, it's too late. So could you afford to take them? What the hell do you do on ops when somebody that bad knee that Private Smith has got is gone again? Well, you can't walk out. You can't whistle up a Land Rover to get them out. So you've really got to start looking hard at people, but you know, you get sort of things like somebody's wife always ringing out saying, you've got to come home because I can't cope and that sort of thing. Well, you're suddenly going to start looking at people and saying, well, what do we do here? So we had that problem, and we discarded about, I don't know how many.
I think it was 7 or 8.
7 or 8.
From the platoon.
Yep. Luckily one of them wasn't me, I was pretty good. And the section commanders were, you know, they were pretty good, so we weren't not looking at that level, but started to look hard at some of the soldiers. We weeded out about 7 or 8. Now, what's an interesting fact, that over the year's operations, your platoon at the end of the year, about a third of it had changed. Either their tours had finished, their time up, once you'd done 12 months in Vietnam, you're out, no matter where it was in the year. Right, so we did have a few that time was up during the year, although most of them went right through. You had reinforcements for guys that were wounded or killed or sick. Right, you had quite a few of those. And I remember now, you know, years later having a platoon reunion, this guy comes up and says, "G'day boss," and I go, "G'day, you know that face?" He said, "Oh, I didn't realise a Rio." So there's quite a lot of, you don't come home with the same crowd. So the 7 or 8 we chucked out turned out to be actually okay. They came up with reinforcements, and some of the ones we took, we made mistakes, so they didn't happen for one reason or another. But you don't know that, you just go on the best judgment at the time. Yep, so there's a bit of weeding out to be done.
How about a bond between the whole platoon?
The bond between the whole platoon, it starts to get closer. Like, it has to. You know, you start relying on it. The guy behind you is going to walk with this safety catch off. You really got to start trusting each other. So there's a bonding and a bit of ass kicking if they don't get it right. If a chap's setting up a trip flare and it goes off, I mean, you just can't afford that on ops. If it's on dust just after standing and somebody lets a trip flare off, because they can bugger it up. I mean, those sort of things can't happen anymore. So the bonding gets tighter, and which it has to. Yep, that's right. About safety. What happens to safety?
Well, your peacetime safety must not disappear, but
Yeah, you've got to forget, you don't forget peacetime. The lessons you learned in peacetime safety are sound, all right? But you've now got to start discarding some of them. And we, fortunate enough, for the courage of some of our COs and OCs, allowed us to do battle drills on a 100-metre range with the machine gun at the rear of the section opening up, right through the gap between soldiers ahead. Right? So you had to know your drills, right? You didn't make sure you didn't run the wrong way or do something stupid. And when you cleared weapons, they had to be cleared. Those sort of things. So you had to give people live ammunition. You had to let them start taking the safety catches off. Right? You had to start to do drills which allow soldiers behind you to fire ahead of you, to either side of you. You had to start doing those sort of things. That takes a bit of guts, because you still get caught in inquiry if it goes wrong.
The other thing that happened as well, during that stage, we were doing this type of training and working it together. Some agent, Platoon Review, for those who recognise him, Sandwich, were the CSM and Section Commander respectively in Victor 3 Company, who had returned 6 months before we deployed, walked with us. And these incidents that Mr. Blair's talking about took place, and they were actually with us. They walked. The section commander had beside him Victor 3 section commander. The gunner had a guy who was with him from that platoon. So there was just about a one-on-one coaching session going on as well. So that helped in the process of coming up to speed with what was required as soon as we deployed. And they were there to assist with encouragement, advice, and anything that they could pass on, they did. So we were very fortunate from that respect as well. We didn't go away, just having read some information. We actually had blokes who had recently returned in the appointments passing to me. Mr. Blair was able to talk to platoon commanders for the first time hot off the press, if you like, back from the where he was in Burnham. That didn't happen. He didn't have anybody there that he could turn to as a platoon commander. The officers didn't go back to one battalion, but they were out poodle fighting somewhere with some officer or something. Got promoted to captain, well, that was a system. And most probably still the same. The NCOs didn't get sent back to Burnham. They went off to Wairuru and they brought in new people. So the system didn't support what it was doing. The process was only when you got to the second stage and put in the battalion.
An interesting thing happened with that, on that sort of thing, that I was conscious of my lack of experience, so therefore I thought it was my job as the platoon commander. I certainly told the NCOs to do that, to get hold of everybody that had been up there, get all the information you can, and we sort of talked about it ad nauseum in the platoon officer night, about ambushing, about do we take these things together, what do we do with the detonators, all that dead cord, what's the best way to wrap it up, and lots of those tiny little details. We thrashed that away amongst ourselves till we got it right, and we listened to people. Now, I remember when we came back from the year of Vietnam, and the next company to go up, I think it was Victor 6, we offered our services to the company, and they turned us down, which I sort of still amazed about to this day. Because the company commander felt like, no, we don't want, we've just got our drills all right, we don't want those guys that are up there coming and changing out all our drills. Instead of actually listening to us and taking the good ideas and discarding the bad ones, they decided that they wouldn't, so we weren't welcome. I remember one platoon commander saying to me, what do you think about this idea? We really like it, we've got it in the company. And it was a system for setting off claymores in the ambush. It was an electrical thing with all flashing diodes and lights, and you fed in the leads from both sides of the ambush. And he said there are buttons here to press, and when you're in the ambush site, if you see the enemy coming from right to left, you press that and the green light will flash, and then you press the other one, the red light will flash, and you press it the number of times the enemy there are, alright? And then you press this button to alert the kill group to sort of set it off and so on. And I looked at it and I said, that's flash, but it won't work. And he thought I was just being, like we didn't do that, so it was no good. And he said, why not? And I said, because it's going to rain, and it's going to get wet, and it's going to bugger up. So it won't work. Besides that, I've never yet met a soldier, and then that includes myself, that was so cool that I could sit there and watch the enemy come into an ambush site and say, oh yes, coming from right to left, push button B. There are 5 of them, push button A. I mean, basically when you see enemy in the jungle at close range, you just go, okay, and that's about all you're capable of doing. So you're not capable of doing anything except squeezing the clackers or pressing a trigger, that's about it. You can't reach behind you and pull communication cord. You reach behind you and pull communication cord, which snakes back through the jungle and is tied around somebody's foot or whatever, right, to alert the rest of the kill group. It doesn't work. The Viet Cong had picked that up from 150 metres away, somebody moving and tugging a cord like that in the jungle. It sticks out like dog's balls. You couldn't dare move. So that leads me on to the next point, is that some of the training you've done that you do in peacetime, you had to look at it and decide that you wouldn't do that anymore and you would do that. So we gave away things like clearing patrols. Always a controversial topic, but we stopped doing it because we had too many casualties in Vietnam, people shooting each other. Right? And it just seemed madness to us as we're secure in our platoon formation to send 2 guys out, or 3 or 4, to sweep across the front of the platoon. Christ! Everybody's sitting there and they're nervous as hell and they see movement. Even though, of course, you've told them the clearing patrol's out there and it's moving from right to left. Where's right to left in the jungle when it's thick? And you're crashing and blundering around out there with this clearing patrol. What happens if you have contact at the same time? Can you fire? You've got guys out there. What do? Do they come running back in and therefore get shot? Do they stay where they are and get overrun by the enemy? So we just said, no, clearing patrols are not necessary. And we mucked around with things like sentry duty either. The number of times we had sentry out from the platoon, right, were only on special occasions. So we changed some of our training and some of our drills to suit the theatre of war, and you'll do the same. And anybody that doesn't is just being stupid. Right? You've got to adapt to the situation you're going into. Which doesn't mean you chuck out what you've learned. You just change what's necessary. Listen to the old heads if you're lucky enough to have access to the ones that have come back. If you're first, oh well, do that.
Did you leave it, was that within your platoon or within the company?
Good point. You had your company SOPs, which the company commander, laid down, and of course you had some input into it, and that's what the company commander understood you were doing out there on your platoon. All right? Which doesn't mean you don't do that, but the company SOPs must be broad, all right, to allow room for your platoon SOPs about what hat you wear and where the perimeter cord goes up around your platoon, and the way that you particularly set your claymores and so on. So they are your platoon SOPs, and everybody in the platoon had to understand them thoroughly. And we changed them if we didn't like them. Right? We'd come back off an op and say, look, that's not, the bloody claymores didn't work that time, or I'm not happy with the way that they are. We need to change that. And we would all talk about it amongst ourselves and fix it up. You had your company SOPs, and they would cover things like when your lock stat comes in, how often you send it in, code procedures, how many spare batteries you're allowed to carry, and bits and pieces like that. But the company commander left it up to you within the platoon. So the company would lay down, say, the minimum amount of ammunition. The company commander knew you carried that amount of ammunition, regardless. But you, as a platoon, might add a third onto that. You might carry some more. Okay. You can add on to that and so on. But you couldn't change the company SOP. You couldn't say, well, we won't carry M72s, because I don't think they're necessary. You had to, if that was a company SOP, then you carried them, because the company commander had to know you had them. Yeah.
Just a question, what reserve of ammunition did you have in Vietnam? Whether it be a company or platoon level?
Carried first line.
So, I'm saying, did the CSM have, or the CP have a reserve of ammunition for you, or you just took whatever?
But any resupply came in on an operation demand.
They're out there too, so they've got no way of getting any extra. All right. Quite often though, company headquarters, or the platoon was with company headquarters, if they hadn't been in a contact, and if you're with company headquarters, you're probably not going to be, because they're noisy. If you'd had one or two contacts and coming in for resupply, you can actually pick up the stuff off. You could get some fresh stuff off company. They'd give you some of theirs and you could change it. But you had full access to helicopters and so on. If you had been in a contact, you get an op, you send an op demand, which means they'll give it out to you lickety split. The ammo would come in.
Within the hours.
But we carried it,
Within a couple of hours.
probably too much. Those of you that have tried on the pen, it's quite heavy.
So just go back to your SOPs, they're a progressive thing within your platoon. You, after an operation or anything, you'd sit down and debrief and go through, okay, does this work? Maybe we can amend that.
Yep.
Did that happen at company level as well?
Yeah, I think so. We talked to the boss, talked to other platoon commanders when you got back. We'd say something that we were trying that was working, and if they liked it, they can have a look at it too. The point is with SOPs is they're not something that's once they're written, they chucked on the top of the shelf, nobody looks at them again. They were something that were carried in your notebook, or everywhere. They're constantly being revised. And things like contact drills and so on, they were pretty set. But scales of ammunition, scale of water that you carried, the DAP zone, paladrin or whatever, they could change.
The other thing that happened also, and we'll get on to this later on, is that when we were in Vietnam, we had the ability to go to the range whenever we wanted to, and we had access to all the ammunition and all the weapons that we had in the platoon, or the company, and there was no restriction. So we wanted to put a bank of claymores up and look at different ways of initiating it. Wanted to do it 25 times and fire 10 at a time. That's what we did. It just your mind boggles when I think of the restrictions when we came back into peacetime later on when I stayed in the system and realised just how fortunate we were, but that's what I wanted.
Just like you've just done, you've just come back from exercise in close country, which would involve you setting an ambush, which probably involved somewhere between 6 and 10 claymores. You'd set them out and you'd say, this is how I do the ambush. What you had to do, what we had to do was, okay, put them in and fire them. Because if you had a bank of 10 claymores all linked up to go, and back to your kill group or whoever going to initiate these was only 3.5 metres behind that bank of 10, and you had to get 3.5 metres behind the bank of 10 and fire them, right? You can see whether the guys are still alive. So you had to actually do what you were going to do. You had to try it out, and we constantly mucked around with that just so we got it right.
So you had a fair time to sort of do basic rehearsals before you went on each operation, basically.
Oh, yes, we had plenty of training time, but once you're up there on ops, you don't. I mean, basically, the ops were as long as 9 to 10 weeks, as short as 3.5, and you're on ops you come back off ops, you're only back from, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and maybe 9 days. Just the time to have a shower, get rid of all your ammunition, resupply your new stuff, get your new set of orders, have a couple of days stand down when you're not on duty, still got your weapons, but you're not on call out, and then you're back in again. Which is a pretty good routine, really. You don't want to be back any longer.
So you were given your next patrol task or whatever about 4 days before you actually went out on?
Yeah, 2 days, 3 days. It wouldn't be a patrol task, it'd be a bit of a
company.
battalion operation. A company the whole battalion's going out. With your company, this is your task. The company commander will give a set of orders to the platoon commanders, the CQMS, the CSM, the sergeants, so the senior and the senior give a set of company orders. We would then go away and think about those. The sergeant and I would discuss, and then we'd give platoon orders, full orders, because they're never given again. What is given after then are daily briefings to your platoon. Right. A full set of orders is given only once at the start of the op. Unless the op changes, there's a major change in attitude of what we're going to do. If we're going from search and destroy to a containment exercise of the village, then you need a complete new set of orders for that.
We just come back to this comment that Mr. Blair made, that just going back off just what you've just done. I understand the last couple of months you did ambush. Now the section commander might go to the boss and say, look, I'm not happy with the way we're doing our ambush. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to get out of the way? Do you want to get it right? So we just make a lane, just a phone call on the landline to battalion headquarters. No problems, you've got it between 9 and 12 tomorrow. Thank you. So just go across to the CQMS, so I'm going to take some ammunition out. But use the stuff that was discarded from the last stop, and away we go. Toot them off down to the range. And I'd be the range safety officer as the sergeant, and the corporal would, away you go. And you just fiddle around until he was happy with it. I'd just say, then keep an eye on it. Or the platoon commander would come along, and he'd do the same when I'd go off to administration, whatever it was. And that's what they did. They all did that. And so it was just a matter of making sure we got it right.
And you use that time between operations to do that, actually, in the theatre.
And that was still going on 6-8 months down the track. Yeah, it was always there, the opportunities there. The guys would come in, straight over to the army, particularly the machine guns. The first place they would go and see, before they even had a shower, M60 to the army. They would just do that. As Mr. Blair said before, you're more focused on your job once you're going to do it for real. That gun was important. The section commander knew what was important. The rifleman knew what was important, and they would concentrate on those things. Everybody did their job to the best of their ability.
I want to make this point now that the major point on when you move from training to operations, I want you to understand that how you are now with your platoons and how you are personally with your own professionalism. If it doesn't seem like that, don't worry too much about it. It comes right. In peacetime, just talking to Sgt King today, Mr. King Dennis, I was just talking today about the despair you felt in peacetime of ever getting the buggers to get it right, you know, or the despair you felt as a section commander would the dickheaded platoon commander ever get this right, you know. A lot of those things disappear, right? So in peacetime you can only get so good. But when you're moving to operations, you'll find your level of performance, as I mentioned before, the level of performance jumps, and you are pleasantly surprised at the performance of your platoon. Right? So don't despair if you see them think, God, will these guys ever learn? Don't worry too much. And if you're the platoon commander, in the end, after you're moving from training to operations, you are responsible for standards in your platoon, no one else. Everyone else contributes, but you are responsible, and there must be no shortcuts. If you're out there on what used to be called 1A back in Burnham, you're thrashing contact drills out with your platoon, you keep going until you are satisfied it's right. And when people are tired and bitchy, and they've worn their knees are poking through their DPM and they're just shattered, right, that's about, you're probably getting it right about there. Don't worry about it. You keep hammering away until you're happy it's right. Don't accept any lowering of standards. Because when it goes wrong, they all look at you. They don't look at anyone else. Okay. So that's a little hard one for the platoon commanders. Okay, relationships within the platoon.
Maybe I can kick that off.
Yep.
It's great to it, Our relationship as Platoon Commander and Platoon Sergeant, and I call him Bill now. I never called him by his Christian name, ever, as when he was my Platoon Commander. The day we first met, he introduced himself by saying, well, "G'day, I'm Bill Blair. Pleased to meet you." And it was always from there by his nickname, which was Sir, or Boss, or Mr. Blair. And we maintained that formality right throughout. And it was reciprocated. I was always known as Sarge or Sergeant. My Christian name wasn't used either. And it worked. It was a good formula, and we stuck with it. And what was important in our relationship also was that I was the 2IC. I was the second in command. He was the commander. And how we worked this in the training situation, as I said before, I'd been there for 9 months before Lieutenant Blair arrived, and I had a number of platoon commanders, 3 or 4. And he had the difficult part of being a new guy, and we'd already been there together as a platoon for 3 months. And I was jealous of this platoon that I had, because I was the guy that had spent the most time with them, and I put all the effort into it. And here's this new platoon commander turned up, and he's going to take over. So there was a certain amount of reluctance to let it go. But I realised, of course, that had to happen. Didn't make it easy for him, but didn't go out of my way. What I didn't want to, what I was frightened of what happened, that he would change what we'd done. That was my concern. And that never happened. To his credit, he didn't do that. And I was personally very grateful for that, because we'd spent a lot of time and effort. But he accepted that, what we've done, and later he came on board and accepted it, and in fact got in front of me much more quickly than I could ever have done and picked up and run with the ball. It was really great. When we got to Vietnam, we were actually operated in 2 parts. When we were in camp, in the battalion, in our company lines and in the platoon lines, it was mainly in the administrative stage. I was the boss. I was, not really, but I had he was still the platoon commander, but I took over the more prominent role. I was more the dominant partner, if you like. And the reason for that was that there was a requirement for the administration to go on, and that was my task. And when we first started off, that's how it was, and we kept that going. The moment the operation orders were given, I then slipped back into being the second in command, being less conspicuous. The platoon commander took over the function as a platoon commander, and from then on until we came back from the operation, the platoon commander was in command. And he dealt with the section commanders. I dealt with the section 2IC. He and I would discuss things, and always it would be his final decision. The only advice I could give to you NCOs with your platoon commanders is always give them the benefit of your experience. You've been around a bit longer than they have. This is, in many cases, their first command for the platoon commander, whereas you've been a section commander and this is your second whack at being in the platoon. And it's important that you give them, and give the platoon commander the advice. You give them your opinion. They take any notice of it, there's the material. At the end of the day, you put your hand in your heart and say, hey, I told them everything I had to tell them. I gave it my best shot, and I gave it my best advice. And I did that with this guy. And he helped me by giving me advice on how I should think that I was doing the way I could do it better. And I listened, because there was another opinion, and he could see the results of what I was doing. That works both ways.
So the dynamics are, you've got a platoon commander, you've got a platoon sergeant, you've got 3 section commanders, and quite often you've got an MFC or an FO. You know, they are sort of the dynamics. They are the relationships that occur within the platoon that have got to work. And back in base, I didn't actually say carry on sergeant and then disappear off the officer's mess. But back in base I tended to relax a little bit from the platoon and let the sergeant sort of take over a bit more, because I needed a break from the guys, right? And I'll tell you why in a minute. And anyway, the sergeant was better at that sort of thing than I was. he would manage the platoon on a day-to-day basis back. But once you got your orders, you've got your pack on, you're heading off to the LZ to fly into your operation, very much you, the platoon commander, come in, total command of the platoon, and I tended to operate with the 3 section commanders, because we were the tactical team, the platoon commander and the 3 section commanders, right? It was our responsibility to make the platoon fight properly. Right? Of course the sergeant's there to back things up, of course. Right, so the section commanders would talk to me over an ambush sighting, how many cameras do you want in this one, and is my section okay, to link up left and right, all that sort of thing is your responsibility. The MFC or FO, they can be, they're sort of, they can be okay. They are kept out of the road normally with you. They should be close to you, the platoon commander, right, but just sort of out of the road. They've got a specialist role to play. They don't take really a command role in the platoon. Right? They might be, if it's an MFC, it might well be a mortar corporal or a sergeant, and if it's a artillery party, then it might be a corporal or even again a sergeant. But they don't have a command role in your platoon. Unless it was an emergency, of course. The only time I gave Larry O'Brien was my MFC commander of the platoon, and he lasted about 20 minutes. It was a bloody great row in the middle of the jungle. So I don't do that. Okay, so they are the dynamics that have to work. The CSM of the company, we had probably the best CSM to go through the Vietnam company. And we loathed and hated him back at base in Malaysia. We felt he was far too strict, he was over the top, he didn't budge an inch, he was so hard on us, the platoon commanders, hard on the senior NCOs, and even harder on the men. Right? And he wasn't liked in the company. People were scared of him. They respected him a bit because he had a fair bit of operational background work, but I had a few arguments with the other platoon commanders. Thought he'd just gone a bit too fast sometimes with his strictness and so on. I thought the boys could do with a bit of relaxation and so on, and he wouldn't budge an inch. And it was towards the end of our tour that I realised the CSM had got it just right. When things, after 12 months on operations, the boys are getting tired, things are starting to, it's harder to hold the discipline, it's harder to hold them together, right? It was the CSM's strong start that saw us through. So I learned a lesson, but it took me 9 months of watching to realise what that guy was all about. So that's the role of the CSM. The company commander was also good. We were very lucky with our company commander. Impeccable standards, never ever did he lower standards, not even to this day. I still sort of, the old knees start knocking when I sort of go and see Evan Torrance, who was Major Torrance then. I like him now and get on well with him, but in those days I just respected him and he was very much sir, and he ruled the company. It was a good show. Yeah.
Question for you, Seth. When you first went over to Malaysia for that 3-month period, like Mr. King said, you, from what I can gather, you basically sat back and took everything in. How hard was that you just come from the battalion training depot to sort of sit back and just take everything in? When you knew you only had that short 3-month period to get it right.
It wasn't too difficult because the platoon was quite well trained. So what I was doing was picking up the latest thing. Like I thought we were full bottle back in 1 Battalion Depot. But when I got to Singapore, I realised, there was even more refinements onto some of the drills, and I had to learn those. I just didn't dawdle around and say nothing. I would ask, why do you set it up that way? Why? Okay, fine, right. So the first sort of couple of times we went out on ops and tried out our ambushing and our patrolling and our harbouring, I'd sort of keep an eye on the things that were going on, and then gradually I thought, you've got a handle on this, that's okay. Oh, they do that? That's interesting. And I didn't find it too hard because I wasn't unhappy with what I saw. It would have been difficult if what I saw, I thought, Christ, I don't like the look of that. And a bit of that did occur. Some of the vets coming back did things different ways that I wasn't particularly happy about. But it didn't occur in my platoon. I was pretty good, quite happy with it. And anyway, the platoon commander, John Sheriff, had been training mine, was very happy and spent a lot of time with me chatting over. He said, are you happy? That's the way we do things. Do you want to change it? And I could say, well, what about this? He'd say, well, we did try that, but for this reason it didn't. So chatted and talked away, and it was quite okay. Dennis King was all part of all that, so we knew what we were doing. There wasn't any disagreements about it. So you might have been a bit lucky. Would have been difficult if I wasn't happy with the way things. In the end, if you're not happy with the way things are doing, you've got to step in, because if it doesn't work, you can't. It's no good saying, well, you know, I didn't think that would never work. You can't do that. I mean, the way around something like that is to say to your sergeant, look, that's the way I want it. That's the way I want it to work, Sarge, anyway. You know, I've made up my mind on it. I've listened, but that's the way I want it to work. Look, if it doesn't work, we'll give it a trial, then we'll revisit the problem. And usually they'll say, oh yeah, okay. And that allows them to say, I told you so. And that's when you, with good grace, say, yeah, you were right. The thing is, with your relationships, you might sit there, you might be sitting there as a lance corporal or corporal, and you might be thinking, should I, you know, how can I talk to the boss like that? I can't talk like that. Just keep things professional. Don't get personal. Don't say, that sucks, boss. Right? Well, where the hell did you get that idea from? You know, you don't get personal. Just say, look, you know, I'm not happy about that. Well, I think, and you keep your reasons professional. I think we should carry this because, you know, and you keep them professional, so you should be able to have even a ding-dong argument, as long as it's professional. I think it's personal. So that applies to the officers as well. Well, I'm the boss anyway, so that's the way it's going to happen.
I think that the point that Mr. Blair's making there is very important to the NCO. I'd like to talk about my relationships that I have with the section with the NCO, and then perhaps we take a break, spend a long couple of days there. But that is important, and we encourage that in the platoon, and Mr. Blair did that with the section. He was saying, if you're not happy about something, I've got to know, you've got to tell me. Don't walk away from this O group if you're not happy. We'll stay and we'll thrash it out. And we did. The relationship I had with the section commanders prior to going to Vietnam was as the trainers, and we worked very closely together. But that changed when we got to Vietnam. I had very little to do with the platoon. Section commanders were in the platoon. They operated to the platoon command. And I had most of my dealings with the section 2IC. When we came back into base, and I would take over the role of being in charge and deal with the NCOs a lot more than the section commanders, because the NCOs would run the platoon. Praise, and there was fatigue, there's always something to do, sentries and so on. Our relationship with the CSM was very professional. I didn't know how good he was until later. And I use this word very occasionally, but he was a professional soldier. He was an outstanding fellow by the name of Bill Blair. And his nickname was Pinky, Whiskey 3 gave him that. And then the other was Blair, called him. But he was an outstanding NCO and warrant officer. And used him in the years since then as someone that I tried to emulate in his ways.
He called Pinky because he was a pom and he never tanned up like the rest of us. I think the boys also called him Wana. Just on this last point before we have a break, was that as a platoon commander, one of the things that really hit me about operations was the total responsibility bit. I wasn't used to it. I was used to, in training and so on, when the sergeant looked after so many things, and quite often I'd wander around the training and say, how are we going, chaps? You know, that's all right, interesting. About time for morning tea. You know What I found was this total responsibility. They came to you in the end on ops for everything. 4 water bottles or 6. You know, where are we? You know, even you know, you look at your map reading, and we'll talk about navigation when you want to, but the lockstat that's sent in every half hour, when they went in every half hour or 3/4 of an hour, depending on what the hell was going on, every 15 minutes if you got too close to two. But what I found was it was you that decided everything. You know, so you'd say to because I insisted that the navigators were the 3 section commanders and the MFC and myself. So there were 4 people navigating what I call actively navigating. That is constantly looking at a map. And I insisted that at any time I stopped or needed to, I could say to the section commander of one section, where do you think we are, Corp? And he would say, well, you know, there, I think. That's where I think we are. 2 section? Yep, I agree, 3 section. No, haven't gone that far. Because we've been going steadily southwest, so I reckon we're here. MFC? MFC is a brilliant navigator. But in the end, they'll say, well, up to you boss, it's your grid difference that goes in. And it is. When you call for artillery fire, it's your grid reference. But the thing I found, and I was absolutely stuffed at the end of the operation, was the constant niggling away at the platoon. I'd say, well, you know, how many? I don't know, just a couple. And then they'd all look at you. What do we do now? Do we go into ambush? Do we ignore it? What do we do? And I found that that I wasn't ready for that. That was a surprise to me. And so by the end of an operation, I'd be absolutely bugging. That's the reason why when I get back from ops, I was quite happy to say to the sailors, thanks, Sergeant. The boys, and he goes through it. There's a set routine, resupply, and I kept out of it. He does it better than I do. He's more efficient and thorough than I am. And I just had to have a break just to get away from the constant things. Even little things like, 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up, boss. What is it? Brown's crook. So, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and, there's no doctor and, so, okay, yeah, right, thanks. So you get up and go and see Brown, he's going, you know what's wrong. Maybe it's the onset of malaria. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe he's just crook. Maybe there's something worrying him in his head. And you're the doctor, you're everything. The medic would say, I think it's such and such. You say to the medic, well, what do you reckon? Medevac at night? The medic would say, I would if I was the boss. So you were left with it. And one night, one of my section commanders, platoon SOP, you don't move anywhere at night without your boots on. You'd think that's pretty straightforward, don't you? But it's just tempting when you just want to leak at night, sort of, just have a leak over the perimeter wire, or you only have to go from there to there. And that's exactly what Corporal Lynch did, and he got a snake bite, whammo, right behind his big toe. 2 big bites right in there. God knows what the snake was, but it must have been a cracker. Because, about 3/4 of an hour later, that guy, froth was coming out of his mouth, he'd gone into hysterics, we're holding him down, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, this bloody noise is going through the jungle, the guys are going, Jesus, everyone's awake, eyeballs are popping up, and all the information, we got Starlight on the phone with the doc at the battalion, and the doc said, well, I'll never forget this bit of advice, really handy. He said, he's either going to live or he's going to die. 7 years of medical college for that. Okay, thanks, Doc. And basically it was up to me, do I call a chocolate or not on the side of night. It was too tall, timber, couldn't move the platoon, too dangerous, there's too much movement in the air, enemy movement in the air, it's just not on. So, Lynchy makes it, and we all sort of held him down and got him through it. And whatever the medic had, we gave him. He did some stuff, we didn't know what it was. And by daylight, we were able to move to an LZ and get him out. He flew him out, he was out for a wee while. It was a real bad snake bite. But that's the platoon commander. You have to make those decisions. And I found that exhausting. And one of the things it stays in my memory forever was that constant, the guys are active constantly. For some it seems like such trivial decisions sometimes, but you make them. And you better get them right. Not only are you saying, well, yes, or no, or 5, or 7, or we will, we won't, you better get it right. Because the guys are depending on you. You want to trip through out in the back, we go. You think you're better. Okay, fine, go and do it, because you said so. You think it's right. Of course they're not stupid. I mean, they use their common sense and they help a lot too, but in the end, you make the final decision. Okay, let's have a break. To me, the platoon commander, they were your key tacticians. They were the guys that did the tactics. Right? They were the people, the section commanders, that fought the battle. They fought the battle. I didn't, he didn't. It's the sections and the section commanders that fight the battle. I've often been asked, did I fire at or hurt anything? No. And if you as a platoon commander are firing and fighting, something's gone wrong somewhere. You as a platoon commander got the job of controlling what the hell's going on. It's your section commanders that fight the battle that get the results. When you come back from an operation and it's been successful, you've clocked up 3 enemy killed, you've all come back and okay, then the section commanders are doing the job. They are the people that get results. And if you come back with the results like 3 contacts with no result, then you start looking hard at the section commanders, what went wrong. That's their job. My job is command. Dennis backs me up, and between the two of us we get this platoon through, but your section commanders fight the battle. That's their job. Okay.
Okay, just before we move on to another subject, just let me talk about my relationship with the company commander. We talked about the CSM before. And the CSM and I didn't have anything to do on operation. I never saw him, except for a couple of times company headquarters moved with us. And we didn't enjoy that at all. And we were much happy once they changed their modus operandi and operated. They went off the location and hid away, and let the platoons operate in their platoon AOs around them, and they could then keep communication on for us, good comms, and get the high ground and be able to report back. And that was one of his ideas, and that was great. The company commander myself didn't have a relationship in that because we didn't see a lot of each other. The company commander obviously dealt with the platoon commander for all things to do with the platoon, and the only time that he dealt with me was when I got in trouble. Happened every now and again. And with a chap like Torrance, he didn't do it very often, but he could really sort you out. The soldiers' respect for him grew as time went on. He actually treated his company like a family, and was very sincere. He was very hard on them. They stepped over the line. He crucified them. But when they did well, he would say so. He handled that part of it very well. And I admired him for that. And still hold him in very high regard. A couple of times that he called me aside was to do with things that had happened in the platoon. He wasn't happy about. And Lieutenant Blair was replaced as the platoon commander. He got promoted to company 2IC 7 months into the operation. And I got a new platoon commander. And this new platoon commander had a very difficult job, the same a couple of out in the smoker in this now, where he had to replace a successful platoon commander, the best platoon commander in Whisky Company. And this guy is going to take his place. Really hard act to follow. A couple of guys said, this guy's going to get a hand. But he needed more than a hand. And he never ever got to the same status or standing or ability of his predecessor. And it was really, the cards were stacked against him right from the beginning. They'd been together for about a year, 7 months, and about 10 months in training. And he came straight in, a newbie, and they were very suspicious of him. So the company commander called me aside, and he recognised that there would be a problem before that between anybody else. And that's how I said to do. And I wasn't able to help him a great deal. It was just it really was beyond me. But a great fellow, and we still share him. So
It didn't help. On his first operation, he ran headlong into a reasonably major contact, and he narrowly missed getting his head whipped off by an RPG, which would have shattered anybody. So it was a most unfortunate introduction to the platoon and their contact rules and so on. So, he had my sympathy that would have sort of knocked anybody when he first off. I was hoping that, nothing would happen, the team would just have a dry operation and allow him to sort of get his feet, but he went headlong into a reasonably major contact, so that didn't help very much. Anyway, tactics. I can sort of sum it up in, we use the triangle. To this day I believe in it for close country work, and that was the basis of ambushing, harbouring, patrolling, and major contacts. It was all based around a triangular concept. There are a number of reasons why we liked it. I can talk to the cows come home about that. But it was one simple tactic. It was all based on a triangle, which means you could adapt everything to it, which has really made it simple for the platoon, easy to learn, and they were all familiar with it. It's very important in close country work that Rifleman Bloggs, right down the back, understands everything that goes on just as much as the platoon commander does. There's no room for somebody that's not sure where the hell everybody else is and what their part in the whole thing is. Especially in close country work where you can't see everyone else. So we based it all around the triangle. I don't know what you do now. And this would be a section out there. 1, 2, 3, platoon headquarters in the middle here, boss, NFC, C, whatever. And that's what we use. And if it was an ambush, like there's the track, right? What we do is we put the, there are different variations. You can put base up, you can put point up. What we settled for in the end was point up, because the noise was the problem. You couldn't have any platoon, no matter what you do, they're going to create some noise. A well-trained platoon's very quiet, but there's still always noise. Soldiers will always want to clean their weapon, clank, clonk, right? They'll stir their coffee, they'll cough, they'll spit, they'll drop something, that sort of thing. So you got that noise that emanates out from the platoon has got to be far enough away from that sort of track. You have to judge that. It depends on the jungle that you're in, whether it's open or whatever. And we have decided to go on an ambush in there. The kill group would be dug in here, and there'd be a track back, there's a bend in it, and that would be the platoon sitting back. Right, that's what we wound up doing. That's one of the ambushes towards the end, right, of operations. The claymores out along here. Right. Each one individually linked, and then each one connected. So there's two initiations. They either initiate each other from left to right, or they initiate from the cords that go out. They all come back to the clackers, which are those big bands wrapped around them, so there's nice. You just have to hit the whole lot. The whole lot goes. And your machine guns are, of course, here, here. That was ambushing. There's a routine to get into it, and there's a routine to get out of it, and so on.
How many guys would you have on the actual ambush site itself?
Sorry?
How many guys would actually be in the ambush site itself, sir?
2 or more, depending on the situation. Sometimes the section commander, if it was one section, or this will be 3 sections, because the gun's on the right, it would be their responsibility to set up that ambush. Each section took a responsibility for setting up an ambush. So if we decide to ambush, it will be given to a section to do. With 3 sections or 2s or whatever. And quite often the section commander would be locating himself in this area here, which is the critical area. He might go down here occasionally, right, just to sit with the guys, make sure everything's all right. There's nothing else to do. But yeah, definitely 2, never less. Sometimes there might be 3 of them down. But you don't want too many, because then they'll start talking to each other, won't they?
It's day and night.
Sorry?
Day and night.
Day and night, yes. You have to make judgments as a team. And what we do is, if you have sentries, if you have 2 people on there and you want 2 people on each gun, well, that's 6 people on sentries you do all the time. You're only going on ops with about 23 people. You're just going to wear them out. So we would have a sentry point wherever I was particularly worried, but usually sort of on one of these guns out the back, we have a sentry point, but they're more listening for anything stumbling into the back. And they shouldn't. If you've sighted that properly back in the thick scrub or something, you shouldn't be too worried about this area here. So you could have a radio and a listening watch during the night here, but this is the kill group up front here.
And when that came in, we put in position, the section would be responsible for the sentries up and down the track. The killer group, provided the handguns to the ambush, was responsible for setting up that. And then the 3rd section was responsible for getting on the perimeter. The perimeter track was the priority. And then they did the guns. Every night, in that formation, that was dug up. Guns down to chest level, and shell strapped to everybody else. And the Maoris had the deepest ones.
Was that, so that ambush group, they were dug down to chest level as well? Or just shell
That
scrape?
was there.
Chest level. Because that's where they're going to fight from. They'll be fighting like that, right? So their head is just so they can see, right? You don't need to dig any deeper. And the less amount you can dig, the better, but I definitely had to do some chest level.
In that ambush here, at that gun, that's the gun. All the ammunition from those belts, every one of them carried 200 rounds, so you had around 1,000. And whatever the section was, times 200, plus the gunners 400 or 500, heaps of rounds, heaps of claymore.
So how long would it take you, how long did it usually take you to set a harbour at night, sir? From the time you decided, right, we're going into a harbour for the night,
Yep.
we're going to do this, to the time you were, like, done?
Yep. good question. In training inside, it would take us over an hour, right? By the time we got up to Vietnam and got into our routine, right, the whole thing could be done in somewhere between 20 minutes and about an hour. Because everybody knew exactly what they had to do. As soon as you, the platoon commander, said, here, and that's what I want to ambush, and section commander said, yeah, okay, boss. Everybody then knew the routine. There's no more orders had to be given. Right? Everybody knew what to do. Right? So there's a set routine, but when that ambush is being set, like this is being dug, and river traps being scraped and chipped, right? That's 1 metre wide, and it's right down to dirt level, so you can move along quickly, and you won't stumble in the night, right? So there's no tricks on that. It's absolutely bare. Right? And there's a perimeter cord around the outside like that. People have got their shell scrapes, right? Just with the back end onto it. Right? So you don't go outside that perimeter cord unless you're lying in your shell scrape. While this is being done, your sentries have been put out where you think the platoon commander of the threat is, and that usually is left or right on the track, or wherever you think the threat might. They are put out, and they're held there until the section commander says everything's in, and you, the platoon commander, check everything. You check everything. You're happy, righto. Then everybody goes on an absolutely silent routine. These guys are pulled back in, and that's it.
That's the most vulnerable period. That has to be done as quickly as possible and as quietly as possible. That's when you're most vulnerable. And that's ground of your own choosing. You chose it. Platoon commander, you chose it. It's your ground, and you have it protected. You need to get that done as quickly as you can. So that was a race, a quiet race. It's surprising how quickly you can dig in quietly if you practice it. The dirt was very similar to mine, dig apart. Good digging, except for the roots and trees. Okay, so in the main, no problem.
And your harbour, the harbour is exactly the same thing. I mean, we didn't, very rarely did we ever harbour without sort of in a semi-ambush posture, because what was the point? You had to do sentry duty anyway, so you might as well have your claymores out, and you never know what you're going to pick up. You know, and it was exactly one of those postures that we probably had one of our more successful ambushes. We knocked off about 5 of them. We only missed the 6th one because the end claymore had come out of the rubber band and knocked off one side of the knife. When they hit the bank, they missed the right-hand switch, right? Which was irritating to Dennis and I. Like, you know, we should have got the 6th, and you can see where the 6th, that end claymore was, and you could see the handprints as that enemy must have got away. And it's a bugger because the lead one was usually more important. So we never quite know who that lead one was. We got the other 5, and that was, we were due to be picked up the next day. We finished a long operation, we're all tired. We were supposed to be taken out by, getting to a roadhead that night and be picked up by trucks. We clearly weren't going to make it, so we come to and decided we'd pick up the next morning. So one more ambush, one more night out, so we did that, and bingo. So, you never know. So we're in that posture. We stopped for lunch, we went into that posture. Every time.
Excuse me, sir, just before you get to your night harbour, did you go through like breaking track,
No.
going to Tepe Harbours just straight in?
No. Breaking track, that's something we did in training that we discarded according to the theatre of operations we were going into. We just weren't in the situation where enemy were following, regiments were following us up. They kept well away from Kiwis, you know, because we were good in the jungle, I think, got a good reputation. So they stayed well clear of us. Plus the fact you're making noise. And anyway, what did it matter? Because if you were in your proper position and people were doing their jobs, the whole idea is the platoon is a bristling, sensitive, explosive thing. If anyone comes anywhere near it who's unauthorised, it will go off. That's the whole idea of it. Anybody comes anywhere near it, they'll get clobbered. So we weren't particularly worried that if two enemy had been silly enough to follow us up that night, and they'd run straight into something. Of course, you were aware of your route into the ambush. You were aware of the direction you'd come in, and that was something you had to, as a platoon commander, think, well, we've left a bloody great trail in there. So maybe that's where your route in might have come from this direction, and that happens to be where your gun decided anyway. So, and they've got their claymores out, of course. So is the other section. Your defensive claymores all out. Because you're carrying about 23, everybody carries a claymore, you're carrying about 23 of them in the platoon. So there's plenty to spare.
Now, during the setting up of the ambush seal, that night routine, you're saying it takes half an hour. Did you stop prior to that and have your evening meal, like in another separate
No, it's done in
In
here.
the,
Yeah. All I would do is I'd be looking at my watch, I know the task that's been set me, and I'm thinking it's getting close to 3:30, I want to be in ambush to get that nice afternoon session. Right, if you're a deer stalker or so on, you know that you go out late evening, early morning, well, things aren't too much different with the enemy we found, although the buggers will always come along at an unexpected hour, but I'd be looking at 3:30, the word would go through to the lead section commander that I'm interested in a night lock. I'd prefer to be in an ambush, but if I can't, it's a harbour, but we'll set up as ambush anyway. So the section commander, he knows what I want, and he's looking for it. And he'll call me forward and say, have a look at that, what do you think? I'll say, perfect. And I'll have a look around, quick recce. The signs, meanwhile the field signals have gone back, the guys know what's happening, they know that why they're stopped, why they're being apparently stuffed around, why they're waiting. If they wait at that pack on the back, so they're standing like this at this stage, they know the boss is up there looking at an ambush site and it won't be long before they get the word. And as soon as you made up your mind to right here, and you go straight into your routine.
In the mornings, they said to pack up all your shit after stand down or before stand to.
Now our procedure was, there wasn't any shit lying around anyway, because after you'd had a meal and so on, it's always packed up, except for your sleeping gear and so on. Okay, the routine in the morning was, the last sentry's on, and I would be woken up as the platoon commander, usually woken up, one of the first ones to be woken up, so I'm sort of up and aware of what's going on, I've got my wits about me. The routine was when you're shaken, and it's time to get up, you don't get up. All the guys do is just sit up, pull their boots on very quietly, just lace them up loosely and just sit. Make sure their weapon's just there, and they just sit and we wait for the dawn to come. Just absolute silence. You don't want stand to, rustle, clink, clink, clink. You don't, that's the last thing you want. So just boots on, the guys quietly sort of, clip their webbing on, which has been sitting next to them, they've got their weapon there, and they just sit and wait. Yawn, stretch, and wait. And then when the signal goes round, eat. That means, you get into your morning routine, breakfast, and sentries out, pack up, move off, about 9 o'clock. So you always might catch that early bird, it's wandering through.
did you always fill in your pit suit when you left the house?
Yes, yep. But I think that they, one of the things I think the enemy, I'm sure they picked up was this triangle, you always, unmistakable where Kiwis have been, you find these odd little sort of scraped down triangles, and I think they worked out we went on to track junctions and stream junctions, they'd often lay mines in those areas, so they were thinking too. You have to be careful. Track junctions, stream junctions are dangerous places. They're used by the enemy as well as by us. So, extra caution when it comes to those.
The equipment that schools have put together there represents an average pack that was carried by us all. The webbing doesn't have any water in the water bottle, there's no ammunition in the pouches. And that's very heavy just by itself, that webbing. Put it on it, really settle into position. So you get it off in the harbour, we actually allowed the everybody who wasn't on sentry could take it off while they were working. They always had their rifle in their hand, and they just slip a bandolier of magazines and just walk around that part of the section on their side of the track. That would be the rifle, with no sling on, was never any further away than by your hand. Now, slings were carried, and they were put on in the harbour when there was a requirement to carry things like water bottles, water containers, or there was a need to carry things or move things. At the time you were out of the harbour, slings came off, back in the pouch. So that equipment, the pack is most probably representative of both the things combined. That's where it carried on the webbing, 2 water bottles, your 4 pouches, and your grenades, and that's quite heavy. I'd just like to mention at this stage, while we're just checking your notes there, it is important that you do this back in your units. Put some of that kit together, and I've given out to you a list of what we put there. Put it together and walk with it. Try and do some things. It's bloody heavy. And 5.56 rounds are much lighter than 7.62. Don't fall into the trap of saying we need more than 130 rounds. First line will take 240 because they're lighter. That's what happens. No, we do that. We'll do that.
Patrolling and ambushing are the two main ways you're going to kill the enemy in close country operations. They're the main ways, unless you're unlucky or lucky enough to stumble across an enemy camp, you're looking for a ding-dong fight. And a ding-dong fight in close country usually results in nobody being killed and lots of ammunition being fired. It just happens to be the way things go. It's not like in a movie you discover an enemy camp and sweep through and kill them. You don't at all. Usually there's a bit of a standoff, rounds are exchanged, lots of fire, there's nothing left for anybody at the end of it. Patrolling and ambushing is how you're going to achieve your success. So that's what you have to get exactly right. And I'll talk briefly about contact drills. Sort of favourite little theme of mine. You must make sure that in your platoon, your contact drills, the drill, and a drill is something you do automatically without thinking. Right? So basically, the only thing you do automatically without thinking is you hit the deck, get yourself into a fire position or under cover, and that's where the contact drill finishes. From what you do then on, contact front, contact left, contact right, contact rear, you know, the sort of things we do, right? They are tactics, because somebody started to think. Don't automatically do anything that you as a platoon commander or section commander you haven't thought about. So don't automatically move your gun up on the right before you've had a look and a think about it. So the only automatic thing you do drill-wise is you hit the deck. And believe me, if you've been through close country, you've just come back from about 9 days in close country, if you've been up there for about 3 solid weeks and you haven't heard a sound, right, the loudest sound you heard is a twig break or a rattle of a spoon against a mug and just hushed voices. You get so used to operating in that absolute quiet that when a round goes off, you'll hit the deck, I guarantee it. It's an automatic reaction to flinch and go down, and that's the right thing to do. Because very few people get killed on the deck. They get killed from the waist upwards, right? Especially in a shooting war. That's where the bullets go. They always go high in a contact. Both yours and theirs will go high. Get down, right? And you'll do it automatically anyway. I'm a high school teacher now, and the other day at lunchtime I'm on duty and I'm wandering around with kids all milling around. And this little third form, you know those packets of drink you poke a straw through and then suck them? You know what you can do with those? You can stand on it and go bang. And this thing went off, bang. And this little kid said, gee, did you see Mr. Blair when that went off? Little shit. So you never lose that. Well, I don't. A loud bang like that, you're not expecting it. You still have the same reaction. Old knees buckling, down you go. And that's the right thing to do. So we were taught, I think, in training, run, down, crawl, observe, fire. And I think what it wound up doing was sort of, you know, down, fire, run, crawl, observe. So the guys, automatically they'll hit the deck, automatically they'll snuggle into where they think they're safe with their head down. The packs will be coming off, right? They don't want those bloody things on. And they're looking to see what's going on. And the safety catches will be off. Don't worry, when you don't give a command, instant. They've worked that out all by themselves. And what you try and do then is the section commander, one of the section commanders will be involved, right? Quite often the lead one, but not always. And you know, we had our share of contact rears and sideways. And the section commander closest to the contact will know that it's coming from his direction. And everybody's hit the deck, and the first thing you're trying to work out is what's going on. Is it coming in or going out? Are we being caught in something big, or is it the lead scout just bowled somebody and that's it? So you try and know. There's the fire's all coming from the front, you know, and the word will come back, contact front, contact front. Right? You're listening for it. That you as a platoon commander, what you're doing is hitting the deck, and the first thing you're worried about is control. Keep control. So you don't want guys firing that can't see anything. Well, if their training's right, they won't be anyway, but they'll be looking, don't worry. The eyeballs will be huge, and you, as a platoon commander, when you assess the direction of the firing, you will try to move towards the direction of the firing. A little bit, on your gut. And the section commander, you don't bother him. Not the first thing he says, what's going on? He will be trying to work that out and tell you, but he won't talk to you until he's controlled the situation. One of his guys might have been bowled. He's trying to save a section there, so leave him alone. He'll tell you as soon as he can. And that's what you go through your drills at, you know, out in the football paddock. You go through it and through it and through it, then in a bit of scrub, then in the jungle, until you've got that routine. So people will know that and they'll automatically do it. And you know, once you start moving a gun or pulling up a rifle section or pulling the guys back or getting them into a line, you are into tactical stuff. It's not a drill. You're making decisions. Of course, you can run through it as a bit of a drill to get people used to what they're expecting, but don't do anything in the jungle unless you have got a reason for it. So don't have the bloody gunner gallivanting around to the right, because that's what he did in the football field. He might run straight into something. And if you move in the jungle, anybody moving or trying to move, you'll get clobbered. So it's quite difficult. That's incidentally why the SIG always travels in front of the platoon commander. Because if he's behind you, there's no way he's moving, and you want that, use that bloody radio, you know, you don't want to turn around as a platoon commander and start heading backwards, you'll get a nickname. Right? So you want your SIG in front of you so that poor bugger, all he's got to do is make sure his radio goes, and he'll be handing it to you anyway. And you'll be saying something like, to company headquarters, contact way out. Good SIG will do that for you. SIG will not pass any factual information until you've cleared it, but they'll learn to do it for you. And often your contact can wind up, see the same sort of triangle coming out again. You're patrolling through the jungle, you have a contact up front, the lead section might wind up to the gun out there, it might wind up to the section out there, there might be a bit of fire being exchanged here, and eventually you might pull that second section in when you consolidate and hello, there's that triangle again. The guys are used to it. They know who they link up with, and you can use that again if you wish.
That's with the platoon sergeant. With the contact front, that's he's responsible for bringing up and making sure that all their protection is achieved, and the link up's there. Cool.
We attacked an enemy camp once. They're up on a hill, right? So we've got the contour lines here. Like that. We heard them up here, and it must have been a reasonably big camp with voices coming from a reasonable direction. That's what we wound up attacking in this formation. We heard the voices. I eventually got my platoon postured like that, and the idea was to move them forward, pepper pot, you know. And it's not like, you know, in the movies, you pepper pot where you see these people gallivanting and then they dive in the cover. They might move forward a couple of metres, crawling. So you're moving, gradually moving a gun up, he's right, and he moves someone up. And gradually this line is moving up, right, until, because sooner or later you're going to open fire. They're going to spot you, and all hell's going to break loose. And when they do, that's what you want, to open fire. You want that whole section to sweep the enemy camp with fire. So you want your initial burst to be devastating and effective, and discouraging the enemy from maybe having a crack at you. But attacking the enemy camp is very difficult to do, and as I said in my little pamphlet, if you attack the enemy camp, you're on the verge of being a legend or history. One or the other is going to happen to you. So it's tricky stuff, especially if they've got bunkers and they're dug in and, you know.
With that said, you said that regarding orders, just giving the initial set at the beginning, what sort of orders would you be giving for like sweeping you guys out and attacking a camp like that?
Hasty orders, they'll be hasty. But basically, if you've practiced that a few times, basically the guys so a lot of the orders don't need to be given, so you're not going through admin and logistics and whatever, you know, I mean, basically, you know, going for it. What happened is you've got to tell the guys what your intention is, and everybody's got to be clear on what's going to happen next. You know, what are we going to do here, right? Now we're going to do a frontal assault. We're doing it on our guts. It's none of us up and charging or bayonet or anything like that. We're going to pepper pot slowly forward until the first time they see us or we get a good shot at them, all right? And my orders might be not to open fire until they fire first, which means we basically want to get as many people seeing the enemy as we can, right? Until one of your soldiers can't resist any longer at that strip. Or they, as what happened in this case, we knew it would. One of the sentries she was supposed to be being a sentry. She, by the way, was drinking out of the stream like this and having a wash. And she looked up, and we were waiting for her, and that's, you know, as soon as she sort of leapt up and dived for a weapon, that's when the whole fire went into it. So, yes, orders were given. I went back, got the 3 section commanders in, and the sergeant said, there's an enemy camp, that's where it's located. What I want is we'll go into a triangle formation, MFC, start silently registering, so you don't have to tell them any more, it's right, it's all set. And we get into our formation. What we're going to do is slowly ease this triangle base up now, slowly ease it forward until we open fire. One of the tricky things is, do you tell company? And you really should. You know, they might want to get involved. We'll hold it there. We'll get another platoon position there, another, and that doesn't, you know, doesn't go on. So you really should tell company that you're on to something. That contact is imminent, and then wait out.
We did tell them, but we started out, we started fire.
Did you do anything like flanking attacks and fire support here?
We found that sort of thing to try and control that. I'm not saying it's impossible, not saying it hasn't been done, but to try and control that in close country is too difficult. If there's any risk to a soldier being bowled, it's not worth it. It wasn't worth it, as far as I was concerned. I mean, New Zealand weren't exactly depending on one platoon that day to win that battle, you know. So what we wanted to do was, we're going to contact the enemy, all right? We're going to get them on. But we're going to do it in a way that I'm absolutely sure, you know, I'm not going to lose anybody here, and we're damn near dead. An RPG came whistling down and hit a tree and splattered Private Teller, who was about 2 away from me. And he just got splattered in the face with little bits and pieces of metal. So it wasn't really, he looked terrible. Blood everywhere. And I said, "You all right?" "Yeah." I said, "Good." Because I'm not going to go and get him out of the crap. He's dug in on the other side of the gully, and the enemy had a firing lane. We realised that what we were looking at, which was a good view of the enemy camp, was their firing lane coming back our way. And the other guys on the right flank had discovered a claymore, you know, front towards the enemy.
So basically, see, that was your stock standard
Yeah, I tried to
way,
get
just
everybody.
moving in the triangle.
The main thing was controlling everybody in, know what's going on. We're slowly moving, and I don't care whether we take, you know, 20 minutes to move 2.5 metres. I don't care. Just very gently and slowly. Everybody doesn't lose touch, and people knew what was going on. And nobody outside that triangle, because once the shots start being fired, all hell breaks loose. You don't want people round with a flank, because you can't see them. You don't know what the hell's going on. The mortar fire controller would tear his hair out, because he knows where the platoon is and he can bring fire in as close as you want it. But he can't if there's somebody out there doing a flanking attack. The closest we got to doing things like that was a sweep. We had our first contact in Vietnam, a successful one. And we were overlooking a river junction, and we bowled a couple of enemy that were in the river. And by the stage all that was over, my nerves were shot to shit. I thought I'd done one bit. I said to Sarge, "You can take the sweep out," which he was really overjoyed about. And he took the sweep out and picked up the 2 enemy in the river, and I said to the soldier that initiated the contact, "How many were there?" And he says, 3, and I got 3. I said, "Well, I've only got 2 bodies, so maybe you missed the 2." He said, "No, I didn't. I got him." So, well, you know, we swept into it, we couldn't find anything, no blood trail or anything like that. He said, "No, I got him." "Okay, you got him." "No, he's not there." So, you know, it was a successful contact. Pleased it was our first one, so, you know, big sigh of relief in the whole platoon. Everybody felt better after that, like, you know, hey, things work. And it was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 days later, because they put the Australian tracker platoon in there after us, they found the 3rd guy who'd been hit fair square in the chest and well, head over heels down, right down the gully, and was hidden in the mud, shrubbery, and died there. So, and it was that did it.
So what was the end result of that camp attack?
Oh, well, it wasn't pretty. We got the sentry. She was bowled in the first exchange of shots, and there was a lot of shots exchanged, and we got a lot of stuff coming at us. We called in close fire, and the enemy shot through. What we got was a hell of a lot of their stuff. We got their mines, their booby traps, their explosive ammunition, hot cups of tea still sitting on the fire. So we chased them out of the camp. We got a lot of stuff that had obviously been sitting up in this camp, booby trapping the fire trails that led through the areas. So maybe it was, you know, maybe it saved some lives or something, I don't know, because we lost a lot of people on those sort of things, the Australians especially. So we got stuff out of the camp. We got 1 enemy KI, but I just think, hey, I attacked an enemy camp and none of us got through. So I think that was pretty nice if we'd bowled off, you know, half a dozen or a dozen of them, but not an expensive one.
As opposed to the Australian tactics, which really were to take these kids out. It was really a soft. And that triangle formation kept coming up all the time. That was the way that you got all round defences, and you just used it. It worked. Wasn't pretty, wasn't spectacular, wasn't daring, wasn't dangerous. But it was successful.
What did the Aussies used to do? Do they used to do the same thing, or?
They did what you actually get to do as part of our training. Close reconnaissance, flanking attack, tons of smoke and up the guts.
Because they learnt those things in Australia at Townsville, at Laverack Barracks, and then they went from there straight into Vietnam, straight onto operations, and they were national servicemen. So they had about 7 to 12 weeks of training, and then they were into operations, and they felt sorry for them. Whereas our guys usually 2 years in the New Zealand Army before they set foot. So that was the difference, and you could see it in the casualty rates.
I think the other thing that interesting that comes out of that comparison also, apart from our national servicemen, was that the Australian battalions didn't have the advantage that we had in that we were trained by our predecessors, the companies of the other companies. The Australian battalion would come up brand new and would take no notice of the lessons learned that would have seen from their predecessors. We were there as Whisky Company. We arrived in November, and the changeover of the battalions was in May. So we got 6 months for each of we had 2 battalion commanders, and we could actually see the difference between 6 battalions and 2 battalions, and when the new 2 battalions arrived, they were as green as grass, and they had not had the advantage that we had.
Nothing wrong with their courage, nothing wrong with the Americans' courage, nothing wrong with they're good, tons of guts, but it just was the professional training, right? That was the difference. Right? It's, I don't know, like the All Blacks in Sri Lanka, it's just there's a hell of a difference, and you can't expect the same result. You must be looking at the agenda and thinking, Christ, we've got a whole lot of things to get through. The rest of those topics are reasonably, they're not so long as these. This is the guts of it, and I think it's appropriate to have a breakdown because tactics is a big one, and you can talk about that for ages. There's lots of opinions and so on, and really it's our bread and butter, isn't it? It's what we do. And you can always argue about it, it's good stuff. So we'll have a break perhaps, and then when we come back, don't despair and look at those list of things. Oh, Christ, no, they won't. We'll chip through those fairly quickly, but I think they're still appear. I'm absolutely sure that in our company, no one talked about fear, no one talked about courage, but I'm sure it was on the tip of everybody's mind. I think that everybody thought about it in their own individual way, and I think they'll be the same as you are now. You'll be thinking, I hope I don't stuff up. I hope I don't turn out to be, in a blue funk. I hope I don't do anything cowardly. Right? That was on, I think, people's minds, but they never, it wasn't the subject that was talked about. But that's probably good. But the more you talk about things like that, I'm not sure it's a good idea. Because morale within your unit, the more you worry about it, the worse it's going to be. Leave it alone. Morale takes care of itself. A well-trained, hard-worked, busy platoon, morale will be good. Once you know that you're doing sensible drills, sensible things, and you've got confidence in your section commanders, and you've got confidence in your platoon commander, the platoon is ticking along nicely, it's working very hard, morale will take care of itself. Right? Of course, you as especially as a platoon commander, keep in the back of your mind, you'll know when your platoon's unhappy or things aren't right, and that's not too good. You've got to work out why that's happening and sort it out. And basically, well-trained, professional platoon working hard, morale will be good anyway. But some things you might like to think about. I think that one of the key things I think about a platoon commander anyway is that you've got to learn to like your soldiers. And that doesn't mean popular. Right? You get fond of them. Right? They're a rough lot. They'll have you on. They'll get drunk. They'll disappoint you. They'll go AWOL. They'll do all those sort of things. Soldiers have always done that. Right? But you get to know them, you trust them, they work well for you, and gradually the respect, the mutual feeling grows, and you eventually get to actually like them, right? Even though they will drive you to distraction sometimes. I think that's what you should look for, not popularity. Leave that alone. Right? Popular platoon commander, I second. If you're ever in a situation as a platoon commander, or even a sergeant for that matter, if you're worried about if things are not seeming right, seek advice first. Go and ask. There are wiser heads around the world. You've got a CSM, you've got a company commander, you've got your fellow platoon commanders. Talk about it, chat about it amongst yourself. Right, if there's something going on. Now, you do get in your platoon times when either morale goes down, because we found that everybody over 12 months had their high and low points, right? You always go through a black patch when things for you're either tired, or your health's a bit low, the news from home isn't all that good, or whatever, you go through a bit of a patch, and everybody's entitled to their patch. So don't sack a soldier because his morale drops or he's dragging his ass a little bit. Help him out of it, get him right, and fix him up. You can't go away and get another one. That's what you've got, right? So you've got to fix them up. And if you can't fix it and you've done everything, that's when you might think about changing them. We did have soldiers in our platoon that after we'd been on ops for a little while, we realised that something wasn't right, and it was basically the guys were, I'm thinking of Vinyl and a couple of others that really were moody, they'd got quiet, they'd isolated slightly, not talking to anybody, something's wrong, and those guys just got scared, right? And they're dangerous to put them out on sentry duty and things like that because they're starting to lose it a little bit. And those guys have you either got to fix them up, find out what's wrong, talk about it. As a platoon commander, you have a chat saying, what's wrong, and I don't know, you work away as sensitively as you can, and you don't call anybody wimps, and you don't let that sort of thing out. It's confidential. You have a chat. If you can fix it up, you can. If you can't, they've got to go, because they're dangerous. Right? They'll let you down, and they'll let the others down.
I think the percentage that we're talking about is like the 5%. And in every organisation, there is the 5%. In a company, 5% of the soldiers and the ones that always get in trouble. The rest of the company, the rest of the soldiers, and if you like to talk to a platoon, the percentage is the same. So we're talking very few. But they need to keep it in perspective that we spend as much time with the good soldiers as we do with the ones that aren't so good. Invariably, what happens in peacetime is we tend to spend 80% of our time with the 20%. 20% of our time with the 80% of the soldiers that really so it's important to keep it perspective.
Mail and booze. Mail is good for morale, mostly, but not always. It can often bring bad news. So you need to be, as a commander at any level, sensitive to mail. Like, it becomes terribly important when you're away. If any of you have been to Bosnia, you'll realise what it means when that mail comes in. And you've got to, things you need to be aware of before you grab yours and bugger off back to your witchy or whatever, right? Just keep an eye on who's getting it and who isn't. If there are soldiers that are not getting any mail and so on, well, maybe you need to sort of look at that. Don't go asking for the padre. You'll make it twice as bloody bad. So watch mail. When it comes in, it can often bring not quite so good news, and you need to be able to handle that when somebody comes tapping on your door and says, "Look, I've got some bad news from home." Right? But you've got plenty of advice to help you with that one. So you've got to watch mail, the two-edged sword. Booze, well, that's good for morale, and too much of it is really not so good at all. So they are if you're a platoon commander and you're worried about your career, right, watch booze with your platoon, because that will sink your career quicker than anything else. Where you have, and you're on, if you're on ops, if you've got live ammunition and you've got booze, right, things can get out of control. So you need to approach those sort of situations sensibly. So as commanders, as a platoon commander, I enjoy having a beer with the platoon. It was good. They deserved it. It was nice to chat to them, mingle with the soldiers, sort of give. Once a few beers and that have gone down, get out of it, right? Go back into your own sort of mess and let the soldiers get on with it. And the duty officer and orderly sergeant and so on will take care of the rest of the evening. And the CSM will have his own ideas about that. You can do it anyway. As I was saying to some earlier on, our first night in Vietnam, our first night we arrived, married up with our live ammunition, that was all issued. We were going on ops for about 10 days, so we had a bit of indoctrination training to do. That 2 Australian platoon commanders were killed that night from 9RNZIR. They were due to go home, they'd finished ops, and they were away in about 3 or 4 days. And soldiers, booze, resentments that they'd harboured over that time, and they got what they called fragged then, which means that basically the soldier pulled a pin out of a grenade, dropped it into their witchy as they walked past. That's a terrible and tragic thing. And it wasn't the only incident that occurred. There were a number of them. None of them in the New Zealand companies. But it happens, and you sort of got to be aware of it. So maybe the soldiers got resentments or something, and it's nobody's talked to them, nobody's spotted that there's something wrong. They just left it, and it can have tragic consequences. And it certainly did. There were a lot of Australians that were killed in that manner. One guy, with a M60 machine gun, let's strip at a officers and sergeants from outside on a whole belt of ammunition. So pretty bloody disastrous stuff. I don't think a lot of that's ever hit the public eye, but it certainly occurred. We were there, we saw it. Courage. I've just got a note here that it came up in the previous presentation, so I sort of added on some notes here. To my mind, the way I see it, there are two types of courage. There's what I call the immediate courage, like when an incident occurs, a contact, right? And a soldier is wounded and somebody does something courageous, like drags them back or goes out in the face of fire or does something particularly brave, and we have ways of rewarding that. We pin medals on people that do that sort of thing. There's plenty of them around here. And that's what I call sort of immediate courage. And what you're worried about, what we're all worried about, is that was me in that situation. Would I just freeze? Would I be able to do what they did? I don't think we should worry about it too much. I think they are special characteristics that some of those people have, and you never know how you're going to act until it's you. And you might do the same sort of thing, or you might just freeze on the spot. I don't know. Most of us freeze on the spot. You know, when sometimes you see something and you think, oh God, I should have acted, and you just seem rooted to the spot, you couldn't do anything, and the moment had passed. I think most of us are like that. I think it's those rare people that suddenly, they just go and do it. That's one sort of courage. And you never, don't waste time about that. I mean, you either do the right thing or, don't know. You can't train for it. Your training will, help you through those things. But really, you can't sort of say, when my moment comes, I'm going to act in this manner. You've got no idea. The sort of courage that I like to dwell a little bit on is the sustained courage, the ability to do your job as a section commander for a whole, long, boring, difficult time. That takes courage, to keep going when everybody's tired. That's the sort of courage that I think you train for and your professionalism will carry you through. That's what you need, right? And that's what you need to sort of worry about. Right? So there's those two sort of situations when courage will be required of you. Everybody's scared. Don't worry about it. They all are. That's just how you deal with it. And how you deal with it is your training takes over. Our first contact was a stuff-up, really. We got away with it, as I said before, with the two people in the river, but what I didn't tell you was that company headquarters that we were with disobeyed instructions and gone out to fill out water bottles out of the river without telling the platoon who had the whole area in ambush. They were at the back of the ambush. And this dickhead, to this day, and a couple of his mates went down, and one of my soldiers came up to me and said, "Boss, company headquarters are down there filling water bottles." And I went, "What?" So I went hooning around there, and I had to go out of the perimeter. So I'm straight away nervous, thinking, God, and I slithered down the bank and out. I'm telling these two guys who are filling with water bottles like this, their rifles are on the bank. And I said, "Come on, you guys, get back inside." I'll kick their ass in a minute, but I'm trying to say it. But with that, they look up and they're looking at the two enemy that were crossing the river. And the enemy have both got AK-47s, and they're turning around to look at us, and I'm going, "Oh, Jesus, what's going to happen now?" And that's when that sentry, that guy with one of these, let strip and solved the problem for us. But we were hooning back into the platoon. I've never seen this company headquarters guy travel so fast. But we could have got plastered trying to get back inside. Right? So, those sort of cock-ups that occur. I was terrified of trying to get back inside. Heart was hammering. I was lucky that I wasn't bold, and I couldn't well have been. It wouldn't have been the soldiers' fault. These clowns from company headquarters. So, morale, don't worry about it. Get on with your training, it'll take care of itself. Don't worry about flag raising, salute, all that sort of carry on. That's military tradition, and we do that. And morale does come out of a parade and colours and that, so that's fine. I'm not knocking that at all. That's part of our tradition. But good morale comes from, thorough tradition. And about doing the right thing at the right time, well, some people do that and some don't. Don't worry about that either. Don't worry about a military cross. Most of them are posthumous.
I agree with all those things that you said there. I think the thing about courage and fear that I would like to just highlight is that it's quite normal to be frightened. One of the things that happens by being frightened is that it actually makes you focus very, very, very strongly on what it is that you're doing. And all your senses become tuned. I mentioned a couple before, the hearing and smell and sight. But particularly the hearing and the smelling are the things that become very, very much attuned to your environment. And we didn't use soap when we washed, if we washed, didn't shave.
I meant to speak to you about that.
Neither did the enemy. It would appear that to overcome their problem, they used to use perfume, and that was a big giveaway as far as we were concerned. So, and that was something that we were often doing. Sniffing the air was quite a common occurrence.
No chewing gum, no aftershave,
Nothing that smells.
none of that sort of stuff. Cigarettes, can't help that. Never eating rice, never wash in the creek. So rice grains don't break down, they just travel down the creek. That's the real big giveaway, rice in the creek. There's only one place that can come from. Now, moving through that list, navigation, I've covered these sort of things as I've sort of been chatting. Navigation is the responsibility of the platoon commander, totally. But he should be, the other people navigating should be the section commanders and the UFC. The sergeant will be doing his own thing with the map, and that's fine. If we really are bushed and we're worried about things, we have a bit of a conference. If you as a platoon commander are not sure where you are, you call in your section commanders and talk about it. And be quite straight up, say, I'm not sure where we are. I'm sort of losing it a bit. What do you reckon? Well, you don't say that first, you just say to them, where do you think we are, where do you think we are, where do you think we are, average them all out. But, navigation is really, the responsibility falls really on the shoulders of the platoon commander, so. And you get good at it, we did it. We really got good at it in the end. You really weren't more than 20 paces out from where you thought you were. If you hadn't come across a stream that you thought you should have, it was normally there within about 20 or so minutes further on. So you got very good at it in the end. It was all done by that prismatic compass, that lovely, heavy, round, black metal prismatic compass, which is brilliant. Never seen anything better than that. And those plastic things should be tossed out. You should have a mutiny back in the units if they dish that out to you and expect you to give them to the orienteerings Battalion Sports Squad, that's all the good things. And those prismatic compasses and a pace counter was how we did it. We did it on bearings, pace counters, and prismatic compass, and that was what we relied on.
What that film didn't show very much top is that the terrain was very flat, very much like the Canterbury Plains, with foothills like the Banks Peninsula, popping up every now and again. So see you out there when you're cleaning your gear there, you had some pace counters, and one of those was carried by each of the section commanders, platoon commander, NFC, the platoon sergeant, and they were relying on pace on a bearing, just like a flight time. But the rubber aids that we were able to use, you could use if we needed them. We had the opportunity of the artillery with a mark shoot, helicopters home in on you and give you a location. Contact, and the team work it out from where you were by the fact that you fired artillery with a bit of back bearing from there. And obviously doing all those things that you're trained to do, your resections, reading your map regularly, and talking amongst yourself.
Armoured Corps were no good. They knew where you had been and where you were going to. Right? So that's the Armoured Corps. Right? We've left that dough, we're not yet at Bung Tau. Because us travelling so fast, they're going to get there anyway, aren't they? But you as an infantryman, when you get out of that ABC, you usually want to know where the hell are we? You want your start point and so on. So navigation is our game.
Do it yourself.
Yes, you could fire a mission, but that sort of advertised the fact that you were bloody lost. So put it right there.
How far would you walk a day, Sue?
Well, as I said, that question comes up a lot. Hell of a different answer. It depends on your task, your terrain. So it would be as short as 3.5 kilometres to perhaps 7 or 8, 9 maybe. You got into a bit of open rubble or stuff, you could move a little bit more quickly. But the scouts dictated the pace, the enemy dictated the pace. If they were there, you go slow right down. There's no sign of them to move a little faster. You'll find that some sections, 1, 2 or 3, some travel faster than others. Like in our platoon, one section was slowly, very careful. 3 section was quite fast, the old steam train 3 section. So if you've got to make an LZ because of the lift out, get 3 section up in front. So I don't know, you just depends on too many things. Basically, you try and move within the speed dictated by your scouts who are indicating. They're the ones up the front, after all. You try and make them faster than they can look and feel and sense and look again. It's not fair to them.
Were you ever gone out on patrol and actually push for time to make some nebulous point?
Yes, yes you were. Now, this is interesting, because this calls into account your courage as a platoon commander, the relationship between you and the company commander, because it'd be him that's trying to get you there, or her, as the case may be these days. It's an unfortunate one, I can't leave that one. But basically, they are saying, they want to get you to, and one or twice a lift off a resupply that was at a certain point at a certain time. What you do in the end is that you stand by your platoon. Right? You owe them your loyalty. They've given you theirs. You give them yours. And you can't move any faster than saying it's dangerous. Maybe you've got your fastest moving section up the front. You've done your best. If you push them any faster than that, you get up the front yourself. The only time I've ever done that was to get through a minefield. It was sandy and we had to get through it. So I decided that I'd go up the front myself because there's no one I could ask to do it. Right? And it wasn't because of being particularly brave or anything, I just thought that's the way it sort of spins out. So it wasn't an enemy threat as such, but we had to get through this minefield out to the beach. So you don't move any faster than you'd expect your scouts to tell you. That's what you train them to do. What you're basically saying is forget about your training and forget about you. I'm trying to impress the boss by getting on. What you say to the boss, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to make it. He says, well, you have to. Sorry. Sorry, say again. Attachments, I've got down there attachments. They are dog tracker teams, engineer mini teams, padres, PR people, first aid nurses. I mean, you can get any sort of weird, wonderful attachments that want to come out with your platoon. Now, you avoid it like the plague. If you can't, then you tuck them down the back with the Sarge. He's appreciative of that. And you, like your engineer mini team, now you think you're lucky stars, you've got them with you sometimes, and you really need them, those guys are brilliant. But don't get them mixed up in the combat fighting part of your platoon. Get them down the back between 2 and 3 section, or your 2nd and 3rd section. And when you need them, bring them forward and brief them. Right? Never let them get tangled up around the platoon commander in the seat. Don't get them up there, they'll get in the road.
Could you just explain what the engineer mini team is, Sue?
Mini team is 2 engineers who, when you're going into a particularly mine area, or you've discovered mines, or you've discovered a booby trap, in which we did, we found them, and your initial delousing is your own problem, but you want an engineer mini team that might fly them in. You explain the problem, and they'll come forward, and they are specialised in mine clearing. Or you might have had a casualty, like some of the platoons did, and they want a mini team in there to help them get these guys out and prod their safe lanes and all that sort of thing. So they'll be those guys. And when they have to get out of a tunnel or a bunker system, I mean, really, no one else will ever do that sort of thing. So they're great at doing their specialised job, but keep them out of the combat running ahead. But you get all sorts, so keep them out of the way.
I've got something to say about them, what I've said, that the majority are hindrance, must be supervised all the time. They have no perception of what our job entails. They're noisy and nosy. I kept them at the back with me under strict instruction of doing their own job. They're very capable, but you must remember they're not drunks. And that's just what
Our MFC, Larry O'Brien, had to speak to him once because he's travelled behind me. And he had this habit of when he was sort of looking, when he was observing his arc, he'd sort of go up to the right like this and sort of sight on something, he'd sort of go like this. The guys behind were going berserk, They see him go like this, like, yeah! I said, Larry, don't do that. Taking aim. The equipment, I think we've talked enough about equipment. Try it, do it as it would be on ops, just to get a feel for it and see what the problems will be. I noticed that some of you have got your own webbing made up and so on, and that's great. You get a comfort fitting, that's fine. But just make sure that with a full load of ammo and so on, it still works. Because you'll find a lot of them, the packs just can't hack it. It's break away. Because those straps will break eventually under the load like that, so you've got to check the straps out. And nothing you want at the start of an operation is you jump off the helicopter, you know, and as you hit the ground, the pack keeps going. Right, so the rest of the operation, you've got your suitcase. So you'll find that some of the stuff in training is beaut, and when you go on ops, it doesn't work. I noticed some guys in the battalion, I've been out with them, you know, they have bayonets strapped around up here for a quick pull, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, a couple of weeks on ops, those things go. It's just crap. Right? It just gets in the road. You know, you don't get into hand-to-hand knife combat fighting very often. And if you are, somebody's stuffed up. Reaction to fire. I think we perhaps covered that in contact drills and so on. Just be aware that as far as the platoon commanders and section commanders are concerned, your big problem with reaction to fire is control. You will lose control when the initial fire occurs. Be ready for it. You will lose it, and you've got to regain it. Right? So you've got to regain control as quickly as you can. You've got to find out what's going on. You've got to start giving some orders and get people doing what you want them to do rather than what they think they're going to do. Right? But there is a period of time when you lose that control, and that's understandable. There's nothing to do with it. 1 minute you're quietly plodding through the jungle and patrol as you've been doing for weeks, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. Right? Just regain control. Reaction to fire, I've talked about it. Get down and then think. Support weapons.
Yeah, my note here that I've got is it's a Pandora's box. Everything was available to us. We had mortars, artillery, rockets. There was aircraft that dropped bombs, there was aircraft that fired rockets, there was aircraft that fired all of those things plus miniguns and machine guns, and they were called Puff the Magic Dragon. The DC-6, and when it fired, it would cover a rugby field with rounds, 4 inches square.
DC-3.
DC-3 was it. Magnificent thing. Not too good when it was
fired. There's a video of the old DC-3, the old thing on World War II, the parachute plane. They had one, Dakota, they had a big door open on one side, and the miniguns and that were all on this door, and they would, once they worked out the target, they would just fly in a circle with the plane banked like that. And the guns would never leave that spot as they went round, and they just poured out all this stuff. Huge flares and something, you could light up South Vietnam if you want. But so you had all this stuff, and it was really easy, just on the end of your phone. People were there to help you, and that's when company headquarters came into its own. When you were stuck and needed help, you're busy with a scrap or a dust off you're trying to get out, you know, all this stuff was just laid on. So you never felt lonely.
Those things are just as far away as a radio call, including strike aircraft, strike choppers. You know, there was helicopters that the Huey copters were available on call. When you went in with most of the movement that we went into the operational area was by helicopter. And I suppose we should talk about hot insertion. I don't know what that means. First happened. And hot insertion one is where the area has not been cleared. So that was good. That sounded good. So they came out in the orders to be a hot insertion. A company was airlifted. They were just picked up by helicopters en masse. Away we went. Before we'd gone in, there'd been artillery fire. Above the passenger carrying helicopters were the Huey copters, and above them were the strike aircraft. So they softened up the target, and then we came. What they didn't tell us was that the machine gun that was in the doorway was going to fire as we landed. So I'm there in the first and ready to go with the axe beside me, and I'm like, well, the bloody gun starts firing. Fuck, which way did it go? Is it going towards me? It's going the other way. And I can tell you, I ran very fast with a one-way pass. Never did it before, and I've never done it since. But I didn't touch the ground until I'd gone quite a long way.
He thinks he had a problem. I was out to the third decade of the rosary when all this stuff. They didn't tell us they were going to fire, and I remember that too, and, you know, we thought we were under attack coming in. So I remember hitting the deck and leopard crawling about 150 metres, which resulted in all the stuff I had in the front of my whipping being ripped off. I don't know where it is to this day. All that stuff just went. Right? So, you know, it scared the shit out of us. You know, it's just a silly little thing that's missed out in the briefing that, you know, should have come up in indoctrination training. What a hot insertion.
And the last thing that I'd like to mention with those, and we've got it some on the slide which we'll flick through shortly, included tanks, APCs, and there was also these things called mobile guns. And there's one there that was a native gun, and when the round landed, and we actually saw one of these in front of the patrol on one day, it was about the same size as the Centennial swimming pool, a hole in the ground. It was just huge, one round. So all of these things were available on call. The enemy didn't have a hell of a lot on his side to throw back at us. It was really very one-sided.
When you're in a fire support base, as we were once part of the perimeter in the fire support, we all had stints in the fire support base, but they're about 250 metres by 250 metres roughly. And at the 8-inch there, they're American, that's another American stuff. When they fired at night, which they did, your hoochie would go and then settle down again. Such was the impact. And they had what they call H&I fire, harassing and interdiction, which basically meant when they felt like it during the night, they lean over and pull the landing out. Security, I can't emphasise security enough. If I could, imprint it on your brain and underline it or write it on your forehead, right? Security, which basically means to me that your platoon can never be approached at any time without somebody, picking you up. There's none of this whole who goes there stuff. It doesn't happen, right? But basically, you'll come under some soldier's barrel if you're trying to get you coming anywhere near one. That's always was my platoon, right? But whenever we got off trucks, even on training, we got off trucks, we're straight off the road, straight into our triangle, sentries out, and even if the company commander came up, or CSM came up to talk to one platoon, we'll talk to, first thing you notice was a soldier lining them up. Right? So your basic security means not at any time, day or night, can you get near your platoon without somebody being able to drop you. That's what security means. You never ever, in a situation where you haven't got your sentries out, or the sentries are in, but everybody else is watching. Never leave any part of your platoon that anyone can approach from. Security, you've got to think about it constantly. So even the stage, when you go down to Boom Tower, which is a rest area, you just don't like sitting on trucks, all together like that. As soon as they sort of stop, you're off. And the guys get used to it. They get off and they get away and get a bit of space. Right.
We never got caught out. It was really teamwork at its best. That's what happened. It very quickly became something that they took apart. No one could get in. Administration. It's always there, and it's often said that time spent in reconnaissance, or time spent in preparation is seldom wasted. Most normal accounting wasn't necessary. We didn't have to account for ammunition, food, medical supplies, compasses, rifles, didn't have to account for. Everything that we required was provided. You asked for it to go. You needed another pair of underpants? What size? Cigarettes, clothing, mail, food extras, toiletries, adobe bags. Everything was available, everything was provided. Everything that you wanted, anything you wanted, was sought after. Having part of that administration was the soldier reporting still was necessary. There was still a requirement for the platoon commander to keep his platoon commander's notebook at the time. Still a requirement for the reporting, for the interviewing, to talk to. There was leave, but 2 lots of leave in the 12 months, 2 5-day breaks. The soldier could go anywhere they wanted to. What they call the rest and recreation centres, R&R, mainly from places in Europe, Japan, across to the States, Hawaii and Sydney, didn't go back to New Zealand, and the Maoris that had their wives of them could go back to Singapore. For those were necessary. Part of the administration that we had was a problem of having the left out of battle. Every time we went out on operation, we had to leave behind a certain number to maintain the base, sentries and looking after things for the troops in the field. And that had to be meticulously recorded as to whose turn it was next, because they didn't want to be there, or wanted to be on the knock. No one wanted to stay behind. And this happened something. They had their mates down, they had to be out in the operations. The roster was important. It couldn't be superseded, otherwise it'd be a hell of an uproar.
Here's some thought here, perhaps. Here's some thought here for the CQMS. underestimate a person in the company that absolutely vital. You'll know if you've got a good CQMS, everything works right and stuff is where it should be at the right time. They often don't get any thanks for it. Nobody wants to be one. Right? So, and if you haven't got a good CQMS, you know that as well, because things just don't work properly. They should. So, you can do what you like about that, but they don't ever get thanked, they don't get much feedback and so on. And they're regarded as base wallers anyway, so who the hell cares for them? And when you come back off ops, you know, the arrogance of the platoons, you know, they've been out there doing this and doing that, and they're up themselves, you know, it's the CQMS that makes sure the barbecue's okay and everybody's fine. And as platoon commanders, if we didn't go over and do something about that, or sergeants certainly, keep in with the CQMS, then you know, you'd be very foolish. So I haven't mentioned him yet tonight, but I'm actually an extremely vital person. And at some stage in your life, most of you are going to have to be one. Right? Hopefully it's short. You want to be a CSM or something. But an absolutely crucial job.
The other one that affects the administration, that actually affected the operational capabilities of the platoons also, was that when the tour of duty finished, it finished. And not everybody went there from the first month to the 12th month. If some of them had been served before, where one of our section commanders had served something like 3, 4 months. So he just completed his tour of duty of 6 months and then was sent back to Maya. So he was only there for a third of the time or a quarter of the time. So as soon as the 2 years was up overseas, or the 9 months was up for those that had who were married unaccompanied, i.e. had their wives back in the room, off they went. So they were replaced by reinforcements. And who were those reinforcements? The guys who didn't want the first time. Or somebody else didn't want the first time. So finished up with them anyhow. Had to start the cycle again. Back in that administrative area, back in base, there was always what they called the tail patrol. Tactical area of responsibility was on all the time, and that was maintained by regularly patrolling and ambushing. And that would be part of the LOBs being left behind, and then with the clerks and the cooks got their opportunity to go out and I would like to be a grunt. But that was you had to be careful, you didn't weigh that up, had to weigh that up with having some real soldiers in there so that you would cover for it. And not everybody wanted to do that. So yeah, those administrative problems went on all the time, so it wasn't everybody got up and moved out and left the base empty, it had to be maintained with a lot of equipment there and stuff. The other thing that I'd like to mention before we move on to the next one just briefly is that the next of kin was very hard for the wives and the children of the soldiers who were serving in Vietnam, who were in Singapore. Whereas when they were in Malaya, they had Tarenda camp, was a brigade camp. They were in a housing area which was easily available to all of the other wives and other members of the unit. Whereas in Singapore, our family was split up. There were different housing estates all over the island. Those of you who have been to Singapore, not that big, but it is quite a lot of people there. And they became isolated, and they were worse off than what their contemporaries were who were living in New Zealand, because at least they had the support of family. So there was those problems that went on as well. And they created problems for those that were serving in the company. Okay.
I don't know, we've covered that. Okay. So the aspects that people want to bring up. I just noticed some notes I scribbled down from last time. Something that's worth thinking about, a little equation here for platoon commanders to think about. For a platoon commander, you've got it, this is a judgment thing. Alright? The more risk you take, the more chance you are likely to obtain results, right? So, let's say we're in an area there's plenty of good side. Let's say I split the platoon into 3. Send off section commander with the Sarge, one section commander on his own, and me with the other section. The chances of me getting results have increased by certain percentages, right? 2/3. But I'm taking a big risk. So what you as commanders have got to do, you've always got to weigh up how much risk can I take? What results will that get me? Right? You've got to make that judgment. And the thing that helps you with your judgment is how much information you've got. How much knowledge do you have? So that when you take your risk, and it's all risk. That's what commanding is all about, risk. When it goes wrong, you were able to stand up and say, well, because of this and because of this, that's what I did, you know. And it's unfortunate it hasn't, didn't work out, but you can stand up and say why you did it. That's all you're really required to do. Because a risk is a risk, and sometimes it just doesn't go quite right. We would occasionally split the platoon. Whereas because I wanted to cover 2 areas, or because it was tactically seemed to be me to be the right sort of thing to do, the level of threat had diminished to the point where I think we don't have to stay as a platoon, I can take a risk here. So the sergeant would command a group, and I would command the other group, and I would split the platoon the way I wanted to split it. So I'd give them 3 sections and half of 2, and I'd have 1 and half of 2. The next time I split it, I'd make sure that combination didn't occur again. Because I didn't want the platoon, the sergeant's little group developing, and my little group developing. Right? So as the platoon commander's decision was based on a tactical reason, and I decided on the split. And don't forget, because you've sent the sergeant away with his group 500 metres further down the track as another ambush site, you are still in command. Right? You must have a radio, and you must be commanding them by radio. Of course, the sergeant, that group is in charge of putting up the ambush that night, and but it's your orders, and you're still in charge. Right? So it's not something we did very often, but occasionally we did when we thought the tactical situation allowed for it.